Okay, so we actually are on this time?
I believe so.
Sorry for the delay if you're just tuning in. Welcome to the Dummy Load.
Again.
Again. Let me make sure this is good. We're good? Awesome. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your patience. I apologize for the timing of it. We just had some technical difficulties that we had to work out. Tonight is a very special episode because we have a special guest with us today from California, and he's going to be getting a little philosophical with us.
All right.
Okay, so this is not a typical Dummy Load. I'm Davey, and we're going to get this thing going.
Yeah.
Who are you?
I'm Dennis.
All right.
And indeed, we're going to get this thing going.
All right.
Man, you had one shot to
Yeah,
go.
Thank you for your patience. Can you not have that?
Sound,
Right.
Dennis. Cut your sound.
I didn't know the sound was going to come on.
Okay, now there's no excuse for technical difficulties after the show has started.
We're a little
okay?
frazzled now.
I'm Michael. I'm producing the show, and to my right, in front of the grand American flag, is...
Hello, I'm Mandolin Reese, the LA Street Angel. Good to be here.
Okay.
Still there, Dave?
Yep.
So,
Okay. So. Sorry about that.
and
All right,
then
we're
we
good.
have
I'm sorry. Michael's producing the show and he's killing me because I don't have everything set up. In a few minutes, I'm going to introduce you to our special guest, Neil Mammen. Okay, he speaks to thousands of people around the country, and we're the Dummy Load. So for us to talk about a topic like, is there a God? I thought it'd be good to bring in some reinforcements. And this guy does this for a living. He goes around speaking, and he's going to be a little bit more knowledgeable on this than us. Neil, are you there?
I am.
Okay, so
I have to use my phone up to my ear for some reason, so the audience knows there's something wrong with my outgoing microphone. So.
Yeah, that was the issue. It was a sound issue, and so before we get started, and before you can get into this, Neil. I thought it would be good for us to introduce ourselves to you, and that way you kind of know where we're coming from. So I want each one of you guys to just answer real quick for Neil's sake. Right now, as it stands, do you believe that there is a God? And if so, which one? Or who is he to you? Okay, like so for me, I would say yes, I believe in there's a God, and I believe in the God that is described in the Bible. Okay.
Yeah, for me, you say a real quick answer. I don't know that I have a real quick answer, so I'll just. I don't follow any particular religion. So I don't subscribe to the belief of God in the same way that you would, as far as the biblical version. So I mean, he'll go into a little bit more what is God, and also Agent X.
Okay.
We'll get into it in a little while.
I just wanted to know, you're basically saying you are a godless heathen. Got it.
like kind of agnostic, maybe.
Well, I mean, we could go into the really long answer.
I think he kind of understands it. So, Mandolin?
I do believe in God, and like Dennis, I don't subscribe to any particular religion. And the reason, I believe, is I've seen spiritual entities, which I think are angels. So I know that there's something out there that most people, maybe they don't understand, but there is supernatural stuff out there. I've seen it for myself, and I wasn't on drugs or alcohol at the time. So
so you believe in there's a God and
angels, yes.
Okay. And Michael?
Yeah, I would confirm what you said. I believe in Jesus Christ, Yahweh, same as the Holy Bible.
Okay. So Neil Mammen is the founder of No Blind Faith at noblindfaith.com. It's an apologetics, theology, and evangelization ministry. Apologetics is the investigation and defense of the truth of Christianity using facts, reason, science, history, archaeology, and philosophy. Neil is a speaker at conferences around the U.S. He's been featured on NPR debating Eric Rothschild of the ACLU and Eugenie Scott, and on over 40 radio shows, including the Bob Dutko Show, the Lars Larson Show, American Family Radio, and KKLA with Frank Pastore. Currently, Neil is touring the state of Kansas with its Governor Sam Brownback, calling churches and Christians to get involved in the Awakening Freedom Tour. Neil's daily Jesus and Politics 1-minute broadcast can be heard on 160 stations around the U.S. on AFR Radio, and to hear them, visit www.j3ip.wordpress.com.
J3I.
I don't think anybody's going to remember that.
1 minute.
www.j3.
Use one of those like acronyms.
All right, think of something for
Yeah,
someone.
well, the J3IP stands for Jesus is involved in politics. I.
Jesus
Oh, okay.
is involved in...
Oh, so it's 3 I's.
Oh, so there was intelligent design in that
Okay.
web address.
All right. Some of Neil's blogs can be found at crossexamined.org and at www.neilmammen.wordpress.com.
I was going to say juggling 3 Idaho potatoes.
Neil, it is great to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Good. I'm hoping you can hear me. How clear is it?
I think we can hear you fine.
Good
Yep.
enough
Okay.
to.
We'll trust the chat to correct us if they can't hear you. So in my introduction, I didn't mention any of your qualifications or background. I was kind of hoping you could give us a little bit of your backstory, who you are, and some light into your ministry and what you're working on.
Sure. So I was born in Ghana, Africa, and then I lived in Jamaica, Sudan, Yemen, Ethiopia, and India.
Wow.
So my father was a professor of physics, and we would travel. He would go to different universities teaching. Now, my parents actually are Indian Christians. They date back to the Church of St. Thomas. St. Thomas came to India in 51 AD.
Actually,
And
you are hard to hear right now, Neil. Can you get a little closer to the microphone, or?
It sounds...
Yeah, I have it right up to my...
Oh, okay.
I think it's because it's a cell phone. It might have something to do with that.
Oh, that's better. Whatever happened.
Okay, I just kind of brought it closer.
Okay.
So, as I was saying, my parents are Christian Indians, and we date our ancestry back to St. Thomas in 51 AD. He came to India and converted some of the locals to Christianity. So I am an engineer during the day. I've started a few companies, a few patents, Silicon Valley, standard story.
Yeah.
And I have degrees in electrical and computer engineering, solid state physics. So.
Yeah, part of the reason why I didn't do your introduction was because all of the degrees and stuff was after
all those letters and stuff.
After the third that I had to look up of degrees and the acronyms, I was like, all right, I think he would probably do a better job with this.
Yeah, and then if he messes it up, it's like, well, you're messing up your own degree, so it's fine.
So what got you into this topic of sort of defending the existence of a God, with your background, or how did that happen?
Well, my dad was a professor in physics, and he was actually, even though he was born in a Christian family, he was an atheist. And he was an atheist till about the age of 28 or 29 or something like that. And when he became a Christian, he saw no reason to separate science from faith. So we grew up with science and faith as one common thing. And it makes sense. If there is a God, then science is only a study of how he did things. And so what we did is we just believed that science and faith have to mesh together. I came to the States when I was 18, went to school to try and get my degree. And I noticed that many Christians were afraid of science. And so I started talking out about it and speaking out about it, and then it kind of developed from there.
Okay. So I've had some debates, and I'm fascinated by this debate. I love to watch YouTube videos, and I love to watch these educated, people go at it. But practically, when I talk to people in my life, it seems to sort of hit a crossroads at two places. As far as the messaging has always been in my circle, it's either creation versus evolution as diametrically opposed, almost like fact versus fiction. I mean, you're either one side of the fence or you're not. So, like, I told a friend of mine from work that you were going to be on here and that you were going to talk about the existence of God and you were going to use science to do it. And he laughed out loud and said, that's ridiculous. You can't defend a fictional character using facts or science. End of story. And so that's sort of the second crossroads that you run into, is as soon as you engage that, you quickly find out that as a Christian, you're arguing from the belief that there are miracles, that God can do anything of his own free will, and so he could just create everything. He's not bound by the law of nature, and so he could just create everything. And the fact that you can't prove it or explain it is that is the evidence of God. I mean, look how everything's so put together so well, and look at nothing in science just falls together like that. But to the skeptic would hear that and say, well, that's fine and good for you. You believe that all you want, but don't teach that to my kids in science class. Science is based on observable cause and effect. There's no observable miracles or occurrences outside of the laws of nature. Therefore, our existence, like everything else that we can observe, must have a rational explanation.
Let me see if I can address that.
Okay.
So the first thing to realize is that there are no miracles that violate the laws of nature. There is not a single miracle that violates the laws of nature, if you understand what nature is. So let's start with this, because I think it's kind of useless to argue about whether science can prove something, because then we can go back and forth. So let me actually present my premise. My premise is quite simply this. For the last 200 years, minus 80, physicists, scientists, skeptics have said that everything that begins to exist needs a cause. And anything that has existed forever needs no cause. And this makes sense if you think about it. If something that has existed forever, then nothing can precede it causally, that's by causation, or temporally, that means in time. So if something has existed forever, there was never anything before it, so nothing could have caused it. Right? That makes logical sense. And so they would say, well, the universe has existed forever, and therefore the universe needs no cause. Now the Christians or the theists would come around and say, wait, hang on. We agree with you on that first premise. Everything which exists forever needs no cause, and anything that begins to exist needs a cause. But we say the universe has not existed forever because we believe God created it in a blinding flash of light. And therefore, God has existed forever and needs no cause. And so then the atheists would say, well, where did God come from? They'd say, well, he exists forever, needs no cause. We'd say, where did the universe come from? They would say, well, it has existed forever and needs no cause. Everybody with me so far?
Yep, I'm with you.
Okay, so until 80 years ago, when suddenly we discovered that there was something called the Big Bang, and the Big Bang meant that the universe had a cause. It had a beginning. In fact, we can trace that beginning back to about 13.7 billion years ago at the point of the singularity. And prior to this point, there is no time, there is no space, there is no matter, there is no energy. There's nothing. There's no quantum particles. There's no fluctuation of nuclear forces. There is basically nothing. And we can measure back that. This is the point. Beyond that, we have no knowledge of any physical entity, any physical being. So everything physical comes to being at that point of the singularity. Well, this leads us to a problem, because now we know the universe had a beginning. And the universe had a beginning, and the universe needs what? It needs a cause. Now, here's the thing. Now, atheists will say, well, that's okay. And by the way, for the longest time, they would fight against it. The Big Bang Theory was made fun of. The very name, the Big Bang Theory, is a mocking name by Frederick Hoyle, who was trying to poo-poo it and saying this was nonsense. Professors were kicked out of colleges. They were kicked out of universities, refused tenure. They were made fun of. But now, of course, we all realize the Big Bang Theory makes sense. It's reasonably true. So using this, I can now provide you what is my conclusion. Now, I can't convince you. I'm going to browbeat you with this information. I can't force you to accept it. And I can't prove anything 100%. But you can't prove anything 100%. It's probably that you can't prove that you're really sitting where you're sitting behind those microphones. You could be in the Matrix, right?
I wish, because
so we don't think that's reasonable. It's possible, but we just don't think it's reasonable. So we want to look for the most reasonable explanation of the fact. Yeah, it's possible that all these weird things would happen, So let's look at the most reasonable answer to the facts. And that's all I'm here to do. Let me present to you the most reasonable thing to me. You may not think it's reasonable, but at least I can present you the argument. And then to refute the argument, remember, there's only two ways to refute an argument. You have to show the facts are wrong, or you have to show the logic is wrong. Everything else is an emotional or a ad hominem or a fallacy. Right? So there are only two ways to refute an argument. You have to show the facts are wrong, or you have to show the logic is wrong. And that's the only way to refute an argument. And I always say, don't let the consequences of your logic force you to abandon that logic. So in other words, at the end of this, I come up with a consequence. Actually, we won't have time to finish it because we only have about, I don't know, how much time do we have, by the way? Do we have a full hour, or are we just going to go till the end of the hour?
Well, we actually hadn't started the show until you were on.
Okay.
And so the show's only been going for just a couple minutes. We don't have a strict schedule, but we do want to respect your time. And so
No, I've got the time. I just wanted to respect your viewers or however it was arranged. So, okay, that's good. So we do have time. That's excellent.
Sure.
Good news. I thought we were starting with 15 minutes left to go, and that was how we have to stop.
Yeah. Tell us if there's a God in a few minutes.
Yeah, the pizza's going to be here in about 20, so I'm just kidding.
So the issue here then is, if everything begins to exist, needs a cause, what was the cause of the universe? Now, atheists might say, well, that's okay. Just because the universe has a cause, that doesn't mean it's God. And I agree. That doesn't mean it's God. But they say we're just going to push the problem back. Whatever created the universe existed forever. We're just going to push it back one step. Well, here's what happens when you push it back one step, is you run into something called the mechanistic problem. The mechanistic problem is quite simply stated this way. If the cause of water being frozen is that the temperature is below zero, then if the temperature has been below zero for all eternity and all known existence, then the water should already be frozen for all eternity. Make sense? So the cause, let me rephrase that because some people get confused. If the cause of water being frozen is that the temperature is below zero, and if the temperature has been below zero for all eternity, the water should already have been frozen for all eternity.
Got it.
So the cause of the universe is something mechanistic. The water can't suddenly up and decide it's going to change its mind and not be frozen today and not be frozen yesterday. If the temperature causes it's zero, then it's zero. So if the universe was caused by something with no mind, with no free will, when did that free will event when did that no mindless mechanistic event take place? In all eternity, it would have taken place in past eternity, in which case the universe should be eternally old. But the universe is not eternally old. It's only 13.7 billion years. So if you have a mechanistic object, it can do one of two things. It can do one thing infinitely ago, or it can do the same thing over and over again randomly or at a set rate or whatever. For instance, let's say I had an alarm clock, and it was set to ring at 9 a.m. on a Sunday. When would that Sunday have occurred? It would have been infinitely ago. But on the other hand, it could be set to ring on a regular basis every Sunday at 9 a.m., in which case it would have rung infinite times. And what that means is either we should have one infinitely old universe, or we have to have infinite universes. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that the atheist only has two options. Because the universe is not infinitely old, if he does not believe in a free will creator of the universe, he has to fall back to the idea that there are infinite universes. Now, the problem with infinite universes is quite simply this. That means every single possible scenario has taken place. That means there's a scenario where this call actually started on time. There's a universe out there where I'm the one sitting next to you, not Davey. There's a universe where all of you are Christians. There's a universe where every time you pray for something, it comes to pass.
That would be a better universe.
That means everybody in that universe is a Christian, right? Or a believer in God. And the reason I think this is not a reasonable answer is because that means there's a universe where we're playing poker. and I come up with 10 royal flushes in a row, and you stand up and say, you're cheating, Neil, and I say, no, 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 Davey. I just happen to be in that one universe where I always get a royal flush. Would you buy that?
No.
Or would you say, no, Neil, you're a cheater, give me my money back?
I would not buy that.
Right?
You owe me some
So
money.
we have two options here. Either the universe is created by a non-mechanistic agent, in which case there has to be infinite other universes, because we know the universe is not infinitely old, or it has to be created by a free will agent. So the first thing we know, the three things we can derive from the Big Bang. This is science. Notice I've not even used the Bible at any point here. So this is all science. First thing we know, the cause of the universe exists forever, without cause. The second thing we know, the cause of the universe is powerful enough to create a universe. And the third thing we know, the cause of the universe has a free will. Now, that's just the beginning. There's actually four other characteristics we can derive. Let me go over them real quick. At the point of the Big Bang, whatever caused the Big Bang was not composed of space or time or energy. Why? Because what caused the Big Bang is space and energy. Therefore, what caused the universe was not physical. It was not in the universe. It's independent of time, independent of space, and independent of energy. Now, what does that sound like to you? Okay, now that's just item 4. Let's go to item 5. Item 5 is at the point of the Big Bang, we find that there are about 90 or so constants that have to be so fine-tuned, otherwise the universe would not occur. For instance, if the ratio, and I'm doing this from memory so I may get this wrong, the ratio of electrons to protons had changed by 1 in the power 10 to the minus 37, then there would be no stars or planets. There are other constants that where if the universe had a change in 1 to the power, like 1 in minus 47, the whole thing would collapse back on itself. And these constants are so fine-tuned, it's like changing a recipe by 1 grain of sand compared to all the grains of sand on 100 million others. In other words, if I had a recipe that said, you need all the grains of sand on 100 million earths and exactly that, and I added 1 more grain of sand, and the whole thing would stop working and blow up and just get destroyed. Well, that's how fine-tuned the universe is. So the fifth thing that we can add to the characteristics of this agent is that it knows how to create a fine-tuned universe. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the sixth thing that we know about is at the point of the Big Bang, there are almost 10 dimensions, at least 10 dimensions. And how do we know what these 10 dimensions are there? Well, we can calculate them out. And there are a series of them in 11 dimensions or 26 dimensions. Now, why is this important? This is important because if you are a 3-dimensional being, which is what you are, you will not be able to understand a 4-dimensional being. Let me give an example. Have you ever done the flat world exercise in school?
I haven't.
I have not either.
Okay. Like the 2-dimensional beings? Like, what is a wall for a 2-dimensional being?
It's
Just a line.
up and down.
Right? So a 2-dimensional being lives on a piece of paper.
Right.
There's no up, there's no down for the 2-dimensional being, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the 2-dimensional being wants to go over the wall, it has to go around. If you draw a line on the paper, it has to go around the line, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the 2-dimensional being can't understand you because you're a 3-dimensional being. If you stick your finger into the 2-dimensional paper, it can just see the circle of your finger. And as you push your finger in, suddenly it sees the rest of your fingers, sees 5 circles, they're not connected together. And then all of a sudden it sees your wrist or your palm, and then all of a sudden the circles are all connected together, one big oval, and then it sees your thumb, so it's like, wow, what is this being going through our paper? You can't understand it. Now imagine that there's a 5-dimensional being trying to intersect our space, or a 4-dimensional being trying to intersect our 3-dimensional space. What will that look like? Well, let's say I take a 4-dimensional ball and I bring it into our 3-dimensional space. First I'll see a dot. Then I'll see the circle growing. It'll grow to the size of the full 4-dimensional ball. and then it'll shrink back down again, and then it'll disappear.
As it passes through.
As it passes through. Exactly. So, here's the question. If there are at least 10 other dimensions out there, and these dimensions are occupied by intelligent beings, and they were to intersect our plane, it would look like they were flying when they intersect our plane, and then they would disappear again. And all the time we would say, oh my gosh, that looks like a ghost, or a demon, or an angel, or whatever you want. Now, the reason I bring this up is not to show you that aspect. And that's interesting. We can go on that side aspect. It's kind of fun to look at that, and I can talk about that briefly later on. But what's important about that is to look at the fact that a two-dimensional creature is flat. And I, as a three-dimensional being, can see inside the two-dimensional being, right? So if you draw a square, can I see inside the square? Right? You can see inside the square. Mm-hmm. Can another square next to it see inside the square? No. Because it just sees the line of the square. So a two-dimensional being cannot hide from a three-dimensional being. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Everything is flat. A three-dimensional being cannot hide from a four-dimensional being. A four-dimensional being cannot hide from a five-dimensional being, and so on and so forth. But here's the deal. The creator of the universe is not in the dimensions. It's extra-dimensional. Therefore, that extra-dimensional being, you cannot hide from that being anywhere. You can't go in something. You can't hide behind something. You can't hide in time. It is, if you will, omnipresent in time and space. So that's item number 6. Whatever created the universe is omnipresent in our universe. There's no way to limit it. Number 7, and this is probably the weakest part of the argument, is that our universe, our Earth, seems to be in a very convenient space for discovery. It's very interesting. I mean, it's not necessary to be there. We could have been anywhere as long as we have a protective covering from the sun, from radiation. Our atmosphere could protect us. But what's interesting is it's a lot easier to make a protective cover from the sun that's opaque, right? You could still get some of the sun rays coming through the clouds, and it would make more sense. It's an easier creation, if you will. But our world has a transparent atmosphere that is also protected. So why is that? Why do we need that? Unless somebody wants us to look out at the stars and discover the Big Bang and the redshift. Secondly, our location is also very key. Did you know that one of the best ways to prove that Einstein's theory of relativity is true is to look at a star behind the sun and see how it curves around the gravitational force of the sun. But the problem with this is to see the star behind the sun. The way it works is you pick a star behind the sun and you look how it curves, and that star will look like it's off to the left of the sun, just slightly. The problem is, if I try to look at a star, how bright is the star? Not very bright, right? How bright is the sun? Very bright. How do I cover the sun with something so I can see the star? It has to be outside the universe. Outside our Earth. And it has to be big enough to cover the sun. But if it's too big, then I'll cover the star to the left of it. If it's too small, it doesn't cover the sun enough, and the sun's too bright, and I can't see the star. Well, it just turns out that we have an object that is the perfect size to cover the sun. It's called the moon. It's 400 times closer and 400 times smaller than the sun. And this is how we proved Einstein's theory of relativity was true initially. See, there is no other solar system that we've seen. I admit there are many out there, but we've never seen another solar system with a planet that has the same relationship to its satellite and its star. And I can go down. The book I have, Whose Age Index, explains all this. But so the last one I would say, and as I said, it's the weakest argument, seems that whatever's out there, the Age Index, wants us to discover the Big Bang and prove it. So when you put all these together, all these characteristics, you have the first one, it's powerful enough to create a universe. I call that omnipotent. It's knowledgeable enough to create a fine-tuned universe, all the fine-tuning of it. We call that omniscient. It is in it's omnipresent in time and space. We call that omnipresent. Of course, it's eternal. It's free will. And also is not composed of matter, energy, or time. And it wants us to discover it. Now, at no point have I used the Bible, and yet that describes exactly the God of the Bible.
So, you actually, excuse me, you ascribe to, basically evolution, just that God did it.
No, not at all. No.
No?
Hang on a second. I need to shut this door here.
Okay. That I didn't mean to follow that up with such a simple question, but that was a lot to listen to and then go, all right, follow-up question.
So, I don't believe in evolution because I just don't think there's enough evidence for it. I've studied the evidence for the last quite a few years, and right now evolution's in a state of crisis. The tree that we had, the tree of life, well, it's been blown up. It's now the shrub of life. Because we found out that we share common DNA with like snails, and we share common DNA with plants.
Oh.
The tree of life is just blown up. They're having a lot of trouble right now. They're going through a little crisis.
Okay.
But I generally don't argue evolution. The reason I don't argue evolution is because every day they'll come up with a new missing link or a new something. It's just a lot of work. So to me, if I can prove philosophically and scientifically and rationally and logically that God exists, then the rest of it is just a mechanical argument. How did he do it? That's fine. We can go ahead and spend our time doing that, but as long as we get the most important part, that a non-mechanistic, free will, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent being or agent created the universe, then we can go from there. So I want to go back really quickly to the miracles idea.
Okay.
So the idea is that there are no miracles. Miracles are not possible. But remember, if you can create a universe, it's easy to change water into wine. Why? Well, that's just a matter-energy converter. Right? Ever watch Star Trek?
I have watched Star Trek.
And the food replicator?
Mm-hmm.
What is it? It's a matter-energy conversion. Now, we can't do it today, but we know that logically that's doable down the line. Once we're able to control matter, we will be able to create and convert things from water into something, just take the energy out of the water. So the real question you're asking is not that water can't be turned into wine. The real question is you're asking, how did Jesus get a matter-energy converter that fit in the palm of his hand 2,000 years ago? Right? That's the real question.
That would be a
But I don't think that's a problem, because I say if Jesus really is God, then this is not a problem. But every single miracle in the Bible is actually explainable with physics. It's real simple. In fact, I can explain the virgin birth. We have virgin births all over this country today. It's called IVF and lesbians.
It's called.
Okay?
It's called what?
IVF, in vitro fertilization.
Ah, okay.
Right?
Oh, I get it. Okay.
Is this surprising? No.
No, that's not.
But why are we so astounded? Oh, virgin birth. Well, come on. So.
Are you saying they had in vitro fertilization back then?
Tearing down the walls of Jericho. Again, energy in the right place. None of these are impossible. Walking across water. Again, anti-gravity machine. We don't have the technology now, but we know that these things are possible.
Well, we don't have it now, but we would have to assume that they didn't have it back then as well.
Exactly. So the question is not that it's impossible. The question is why it's so improbable. How could it have happened back then?
Yeah.
And I'm just moving from the realm of saying, I'm not saying that's how they did it. I'm just saying I'm moving to the realm of it can't be done to, yes, it can be done, we just can't understand how they did it.
Okay.
And if my Agent X is right, if there is a being that is all-powerful, then these things are more probable.
You said in your Who is Agent X DVD that the Bible is 99.8% accurate. Where did that number come from?
Okay. So let me explain how that came from. So if you look at the if you understand the full context of that, what I said is that the Bible has been transmitted 99.8% accurately. In the last 2,000 years, I can prove that what I have today is what they wrote 2,000 years ago.
Okay, that clears it up,
Okay.
because that was it?
Yeah. Just because when I say accurate, I don't mean how can I prove it's 100% true. That's a different argument. I'm just trying to prove that what I have is what they wrote. Yeah. And they believed that Jesus was God, and they were willing to die for what they wrote. And the reason I say that is because a lot of people think that the Bible has been translated. But if you actually look at the way the Bible was translated, we never go back to the last translation. We always go back to the original Greek. And we have manuscripts of the original Greek that date within 25 years to 50 years of when it was actually written.
Like the Dead Sea Scrolls.
No,
the mirrors on tablets.
actually the Dead Sea Scrolls is very interesting. The Dead Sea Scrolls is only the Old Testament. And some other stuff. But what's interesting about the Dead Sea Scrolls is for years the Dead Sea Scrolls had the Christians said the prophecy of Isaiah prophesied a whole bunch of things in the future. And all the skeptics said, no, that was added later, because it's too accurate, so obviously it was added later. And then we found the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they dated to 400 years before anything that had happened. And now they were going, okay, I guess the book of Isaiah is 400 years old and wasn't written recently. So,
as far as what people believed back then, how can you give it? I understand if it's been translated 98.8 or 99.8% accurately, then what we have now is what they had then. But how can you validate what they had then? We had, ancient Greeks believe that people in Africa were dark-skinned because Helios, the god of the sun, flew his flaming chariot too close to the earth and scorched their skin.
Right.
I mean, they believed that back then. So why have any more validity on what people who wrote the Bible believe?
Okay, and I agree 100%. If that's what they were saying, that would be fine. But remember what the Gospels say. The Gospels say, we followed Jesus for 3 years. He did miracles in front of us. He claimed that he would rise from the dead. He died in front of us. We buried him. And then we saw him alive for 40 days afterwards, before he ascended into heaven. Now, the question then is, why? And then they went out to die for that. This is a completely different thing. It's not, the people in Africa are darker for this reason, and I'm willing to die for it because somebody told me this. Many people are willing to die for a lie that somebody else told them, right? The Nazis died for what Hitler told them. The 9/11 hijackers died for what Osama bin Laden told them. But these apostles were dying for what they had written themselves. They said, I saw him die and come back to life, and I am willing to die for this. So what would prompt a person to die for a lie? There are only 3 things that will prompt a person to die for a lie. 1, money. 2, power. And 3, sex. Right? You'd say, hey, let's come up with this idea, and we'll get money, power, and sex out of it. Oh, we may accidentally die going out trying to get this power and money, but hey, it'll be fun. But these guys weren't after power. They were running away from everybody. Money, they were the poorest people in the lot. And sex, they were saying, stay married to one wife and don't cheat on her. And they weren't getting any action that way. They had no motivation to come up with this lie. What sort of idiot would create a lie that didn't give them anything and then go and die this horrible, miserable death? Paulus comes all the way to India, gets pierced while he's out there preaching the gospel. Peter supposedly gets crucified upside down. John gets boiled in oil and then exiled. He's the only guy who didn't die. Philip gets on alive with knives or with saws, and all these other guys get flayed alive, and it's just a horrible thing. So yeah, maybe they were wrong. And my argument is they believed Jesus was God. So the only way this could happen is if Jesus was the original David Copperfield. He pretended to rise from the dead.
I don't know if that's the only way. I mean, they say they saw Jesus 3 days later. They might have been on some wacky berries they got from the bush out by the hut. They might have, seen another bearded guy that looked like him. I mean, it's hard for us to speculate 2,000 years later
that
that's the only way.
Turns out, and I actually have a talk on this too, and I go through a number of different scenarios. There really are only a few possible scenarios. One, if they were on some wacky drug, psychologists say that if 11 people have the same psychotic experience, where they see the exact same thing, it's not a psychotic experience. Right? You can't see an illusion of something that's shared with everybody, unless somebody gets the illusion. Secondly, we know the grave of Jesus was empty, and the reason we know that is because the religion of Christianity would have died if the grave of Jesus was not empty. And the Romans and the Jews wanted to end Christianity, so they would have easily pulled out the body and revealed it and said, here's the body of Jesus. And we also know that Jesus was a real human being, from Tacitus, who was not a Christian, Pliny was not a Christian, Josephus was not a Christian. Even without using the Bible, I can prove that Jesus was a real human being. And Tacitus says that Jesus was crucified and suffered the extreme penalty under Pontius Pilate during the reign of Tiberius Caesar. This is exactly what it says in the Bible. And after this cult of Christians arose that believed him. Josephus said they believed they saw him alive. Right? So you see all these things. So the body of Jesus could not be in the grave because they believed it was empty. So that means there are only a few possibilities. Hallucination, which we've eliminated. Romans took the body, which we can eliminate because the Romans would have procured the body. The Jews took the body, which we can eliminate because they would have procured the body. How about the disciples stole the body? But then you have a problem. That if the disciples stole the body, then why would they die for the lie? There is one theory. There are two theories that are possible. It's called the twin theory. And by the way, this is the only theory that many scholars think are possible. And when I explain it, you'll see why I don't think it's possible. So the twin theory goes like this. Jesus was born in a cave. At the same time as he was born in the cave, these twins were also born in the cave right next to him, in the stable next to him. Somehow, in the darkness, and we'll call these twins Peter and Jeter. In the darkness, Peter got switched with Jesus.
Wow.
So Peter thinks he's Jesus, goes off believing his name is Jesus, while the real Jesus and Jeter go off and live their life.
And Jeter went on to
Years
play
later,
baseball.
Jeter starts preaching that he's Jesus, that he's Messiah, he's crucified. Jeter's walking through town at the time. He's his twin brother, that he doesn't know is Bizarre, on the cross, and says, I know, I'll pretend to be him.
That's crazy.
Right, we're getting, that's a little.
That's absurd.
I wouldn't say that was a reasonable theory. So, if I could, one of the things you first started with, and I think it kind of started your premise, and if you could clear it up, perhaps you already said it and I missed it, but what kicked this whole thing off was the idea that if something has been around forever, then it doesn't need a cause, but anything that had a beginning had a cause, and so something had to cause it. And so we don't need to explain the existence of the universe because the universe has been around forever, is what some say. And you said that, and you said that the universe definitely had a beginning. Now, when you say the universe,
science can prove the universe had a beginning.
Okay. When you say the universe, you mean everything, or everything? I mean, all the stars, all the planets, space itself?
Everything.
Okay.
Time, space.
So how do you say that hasn't been around forever?
Big Bang Theory conclusively proves that everything had a beginning about 13.7 billion years ago.
How do they come up with that number?
She said maybe she said how did they come up with that number, and how did they decide that it all had a beginning?
By working backwards from expansion.
Working backwards.
Is my mic out?
Exactly. So we're working backwards from the expansion rate of the universe. We know how fast it's expanding. We just work backwards. 13.7 billion years. Everything collapses. We've been verified this over and over again.
Okay. I think that the motivation for people on both sides of the aisle is because of the implications that would come. If I believe that there is a God, then there are implications to that, and if I think there are no God, then there are implications to that. One of our listeners named Dot said to me that her opinion is that religion is responsible for the majority of wars and injustice to people unwilling to conform to. The religious have the power. Example of crusades, Muslim extremists. Hitler even claimed to be fighting for God. And so a lot of people take the power. They claim that it's all in the name of God, religion, Allah, Sharia. Put anything on it, but they're trying to get the culture to conform to their belief. And so she believes that the implication, I think, and this is, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think she thought that the implication that if there was a God, that would actually be a bad thing because it would just be used for harm.
Let me answer that.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a calculation once, and I calculated all the religious wars. Let's just assume, okay, we take all the religious wars, and we add them all up, and the number of people that died. You have to remember, the total population of the entire world until the 1900s was less than 3 billion. Okay, so I calculated all the wars, and the number, now I'm going to only talk about Christians, okay, Christian wars. The numbers attributed to Christian killing, okay, crusades, 30-year war, anything, even those things which we disagree with. I disagree with most of them, except for the crusades, which is interesting. I'll talk about that. We can conclude that there are less than 3 million people killed. Let's multiply that by 3 to be safe. That's 18 million. Did you know because of atheism, over 120 million people were killed just in the 19th century? Here are the numbers. Hitler killed 13 million. Hitler, by the way, is not a Christian. In fact, we have documents that show that after he killed the Jews, he was coming after the Christians. He just used Christianity initially, but once he was in power, he didn't even pretend to be Christian, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he was actually probably more of a witchcraft cultist or cultist kind of thing. But there's enough evidence there. So that's number one. He killed 13 million. That's petty. Stalin killed 40 million. Mao killed 80 million. And these are atheistic regimes. Okay? You really want to complain about that? You got 120, not even counting Hitler, 80 and 40 is 120. You had Hitler, you got Pol Pot, you had Cambodia, you had Miguel Hilmillion, you add them all up. And you've got this horrible, horrible legacy. Here's the difference. Yeah, Christians have killed people, and they shouldn't have. But there's nothing in the Bible that says, in the New Testament that says you should go out and kill people to believe. But there's nothing in atheism that says you shouldn't kill people. Because there's no moral code in atheism. Now, every atheist can come up with their own moral code. And that's exactly what Stalin did. I'm not saying all atheists are bad people. But an atheist can't go up to another atheist and say, you should be good to people. A Christian can go up to somebody and say, you should be good to people.
I think.
Okay, hey guys, I have an emergency happening in the back.
Okay.
So can I just put you on mute for a little while and come back?
No, actually, we can wrap up with that. We are sure grateful for you coming on our show, Neil. If you want to know more about Neil, his ministry, I was going to ask you before you left. What is it that if you could tell the viewers what you're most, if you could steer them to one place to learn more about you, to hear more about what you're doing, where would it be?
I'd say go to NoBlindFaith.com.
NoBlindFaith.com. And we'll post all those links to your ministries up. And thank you so much for joining us tonight, Neil. And I hope we'll talk to you again.
Thanks. Yeah, next time we'll do this in a different environment where I'll make sure the phone works and everything, and we'll have a better conversation.
Excellent. Thank you again.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, bye.
All right, are we on there?
Yeah, we're still.
Well, that was an interesting topic, and it left
too bad
me.
I had to leave so abruptly.
Yeah,
Does
but
my
you know what's funny? It's 20 after 9, and that was almost the hour. And I was afraid. It seems silly now, but I was afraid that we were gonna get done in 20 minutes, and then I was gonna be
I didn't think that.
I was like, man, I hope we have enough to talk
I feel
about.
like we barely scratched the
Yeah, we
surface.
did.
I was afraid of that for a little bit too.
We barely scratched the surface, and but I hope you enjoyed it. We're gonna post Neil's websites and the things that he's involved in on the link of the video. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe. We have bought 5 of the DVDs from Neil, called his No Blind Faith website, and his DVDs called Who is Agent X, and he sort of goes into a lot of the stuff that he talked about here. He also has an animated video in it where it kind of explains that concept of dimensions he was talking about.
For visual.
2-dimension versus 3-dimension.
It's called Family Guy. That's on Fox on Sundays.
I think you might understand. I think if I had just listened to that dimension topic, I mean, he lost me obviously after a little bit, but I understood a lot of it from this DVD. So if you are one of the first 5 people that email us at thedummyload@gmail.com, we will send us your address. We will send you a DVD, compliments of watching the show. Again, this is The Dummy Load. Thanks for joining, and we will see you next week on time at 8 p.m.
At least we'll try.
Friday. We'll talk to you later.